and welcome to another nighttime reading. Once again, as I've explained before, these are going to be pre-recorded videos until I have whatever is going on with YouTube and my live videos figured out. But this will be coming out at 8 p.m. Once again, you will see a notification on Facebook about it, and it will also be archived on Anchor as well. So if you missed this video, it will also be on Anchor, and you can see it in any pretty much podcatcher and all that good stuff. But tonight is Fairy Tale Friday, and I've been doing a lot of Grimm's fairy tales, so I'm going to continue in that theme, I think. And I've got 2 or 3 fairy tales I'm going to be reading each night. And the first one is going to be the fairy tale. It's titled Ashputtel. And I have heard of this fairy tale, but I haven't written it in a while, so we'll just get going and we'll see how we like it. Ashputtel. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and when she felt that her end drew nigh, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Always be my good girl, and I will look down from heaven and watch over you." Soon afterwards, she shut her eyes and died, and was buried in the garden. And the little girl went every day to her grave and wept, and was always good and kind to all about her. And the snow fell and spread a beautiful white covering over the grave. But by the time spring came, and the sun had melted it away again, her father had married another wife. This new wife had 2 daughters of her own, that she brought home with her. They were fair in face, but foul of heart. And it was now a sorry time for the poor little girl. "What does the good-for-nothing want in the parlor?" said they. "They who would eat bread should first earn it. Away with the kitchen maid." Then they took away her fine clothes and gave her old gray frock to put on, and laughed at her, and turned her into the kitchen. There she was forced to do her duty, to rise early before daylight, to bring the water, to make the fire, to cook and to wash. Besides that, the sisters plagued her in all sorts of ways, and laughed at her. In the evening, when she was tired, she had no bed to lie down on, but she was made to lie by the hearth among the ashes. And as this, of course, made her always dusty and dirty, they called her Ashputtel. It happened once that the father was going to the fair, and asked his wife's daughters what he should bring them. "Fine clothes," said the first. "Pearls and diamonds," cried the second. "Now, child," said he to his own daughter, "what will you have?" "The first twig, dear father, that brushes against your hat when you turn your face to come home," said she. Then he bought for the first two, the fine clothes and pearls and diamonds they had asked for, and on his way home, as he rode through the green crops, a hazel twig brushed against him and almost pushed off his hat. So he broke it off and brought it away, and when he got home, he gave it to his daughter. Then she took it and went to her mother's grave and planted it there, and cried so much that it was watered with her tears, and there it grew and became a fine tree. Three times every day she went to it and cried, and soon a little bird came and built its nest upon the tree, and talked with her, and watched over her, and brought her whatever she wished for. Now it happened that the king of that land held a feast, which was to last 3 days. And out of those who came to it, his son was to choose a bride for himself. Ashputtel's 2 sisters were asked to come, so they called her up and said, "Now comb our hair, brush our shoes, and tie our sashes for us, for we are going to dance at the king's feast." Then she did as she was told. But when all was done, she could not help crying, for she thought to herself she should so have liked to have gone with them to the ball. And at last she begged her mother very hard to let her go. "You, Ashputtel," said she, "you have nothing to wear, no clothes at all, you can't even dance. You want to go to the ball?" And when she kept on begging, she said at last, to get rid of her, "I will throw this dishful of peas into the ash heap, and if in 2 hours' time you have picked them all out, you shall go to the feast too." Then she threw the peas down among the ashes. But the little maiden ran out the back door into the garden and cried out, "Hither, hither through the sky, turtle doves and linnets fly, blackbird thrush and chaffinch gay, hither, hither, haste away. One and all come help me quick, haste ye, pick, pick, pick." Then first came 2 white doves, flying in at the kitchen window. Next came 2 turtle doves, and after them came all the little birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering in, and they flew down into the ashes. And the little doves stooped their heads down and set to work, pick, 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 and then all the others began to pick, pick, pick. And among them all they soon picked out all the good grain and put it into a dish, but left the ashes. Long before the end of the hour, the work was quite done, and all flew out again at the windows. Then Ashputtel brought the dish to her mother, overjoyed at the thought that now she should go to the ball. But the mother said, "No, no, you slut, you have no clothes and cannot dance, and you shall not go." And when Ashputtel begged very hard to go, she said, "If you can in 1 hour's time, pick 2 of these dishes of peas out of the ashes, you shall go too." And thus she thought she should at least get rid of it. So she took 2 dishes of peas into the ashes. But the little maiden went out into the garden at the back of the house and cried out as before, "Hither, hither through the sky, turtle doves and linnets fly, blackbird thrush and chaffinch gay, hither, hither, haste away. One and all come help me quick, haste ye, pick, pick, pick." When first came 2 white doves in at the kitchen window, next came 2 turtle doves, and after them came all the little birds under heaven, chirping and hopping about. And they flew down into the ashes, and the little doves put their heads down and set to work, pick, pick, pick. And then all the others began, pick, pick, pick. And they put all the good grain into the dishes, and left all the ashes. Before half an hour's time all was done, and out they flew again. And then Ashputtel took the dishes to her mother, rejoicing to think that she should now go to the ball. But her mother said, "It is all no use. You cannot go. You have no clothes and cannot dance, and you would only put us to shame." And off she went with her 2 daughters to the ball. Now when all were gone and nobody left at home, Ashputtel went sorrowfully and sat down under the hazel tree, and cried out, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." Then her friend the bird flew out of the tree and brought a gold and silver dress for her, and slippers of spangled silk, and she put them on, and followed her sisters to the feast. But they did not know her, and thought it must be some strange princess. She looked so fine and beautiful in her rich clothes, and they never once thought of Ashputtel, taking it for granted that she was safe at home in the dirt. The king's son soon came up to her, and took her by the hand and danced with her, and no one else. And he never left her hand. But when anyone else came to ask her to dance, he said, "This lady is dancing with me." Thus they danced till a late hour of the night, and then she wanted to go home. And the king's son said, "I shall go and take care of you to your home," for he wanted to see where the beautiful maiden lived. But she slipped away from him unawares, and ran off towards home. And as the prince followed her, she jumped up into the pigeon house and shut the door. Then he waited till her father came home, and told him that the unknown maiden, who had been at the feast, had hid herself in the pigeon house. But when they had broken open the door and found no one within, and as they came into the house, Ashputtel was lying as she always did, in her dirty frock by the ashes, and her dim little lamp was burning in the chimney. For she had run so quickly as she could through the pigeon house and on to the hazel tree, and had there taken off her beautiful clothes and put them beneath the tree, that the bird might carry them away, and had laid down again amid the ashes in her gray little frock. Now, the next day, when the feast was again held, and her father, mother, and sisters were gone, Ashputtel went to the hazel tree and said, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." And the bird came and brought a still finer dress than the one she had worn the day before. And when she came into the ball, everyone wondered at her beauty. But the king's son, who was waiting for her, took her by the hand and danced with her. And when anyone asked her to dance, he said as before, "This lady is dancing with me." When night came, she wanted to go home, and the king's son followed her here as before, that he might see into what house she went. But she sprang away from him all at once into the garden behind her father's house. In this garden stood a fine, large pear tree full of ripe fruit. And Ashputtel, not knowing where to hide herself, climbed up into it without being seen. Then the king's son lost sight of her, and could not find out where she was gone, but waited till her father came home and said to him, "The unknown lady who danced with me has slipped away, and I think she must have sprung into the pear tree." The father thought to himself, "Can it be Ashputtel?" So he had an axe brought, and they cut down the tree, but found no one upon it. And when they came back into the kitchen, there lay Ashputtel among the ashes, for she had slipped down on the other side of the tree, and carried her beautiful clothes back to the bird at the hazel tree, and then put on her little gray frock. The third day, when her father and mother and sisters were gone, she went again into the garden, and said, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." Then her kind friend the bird brought a dress still finer than the former one, and slippers which were all of gold, so that when she came to the feast, no one knew what to say, for wonder at her beauty. And the king's son danced with nobody but her, and when anybody else asked her to dance, he said, "This lady is my partner." When night came, she wanted to go home, and the king's son would go with her, and said to himself, I will not lose her this time. But however, she again slipped away from him, though in such a hurry she had dropped her left golden slipper upon the stairs. The prince took the shoe and went the next day to the king, his father, and said, I will take for my wife the lady that this golden slipper fits. Then both the sisters were overjoyed to hear it, for they had beautiful feet, and had no doubt that they could wear the golden slipper. The eldest went first, and into the room where the slipper was, and wanted to try it on, and the mother stood by. But her great toe would not go into it, and the shoe was altogether much too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife, this is where it kind of gets a little gruesome, and said, never mind, cut it off. When you are clean, you will not care about toes. You will not want to walk. So the silly girl cut off her great toe, and thus squeezed on the shoe, and went to the king's son. Then he took her for his bride, and set her beside him on his horse, and rode away with her homewards. But on their way home, they had to pass by the hazel tree that Ashputtel had planted, and on a branch sat a little dove, singing. Back again, look to the shoe. The shoe was too small and not made for you. Prince, prince, look again for thy bride, for she's not the true one that sits by thy side. Then the prince got down and looked at her foot, and saw, by the blood that streamed from it, what a trick she had played on him. So he turned his horse around and brought the false bride back to her home and said, this is not the right bride. Let the other sister try and put on the slipper. Then she went into the room and got her foot into the shoe, all but the heel, which was far too large. But her mother squeezed it all in till the blood came, and took her to the king's son, and he set her as his bride by his side on his horse, and rode away with her. But when they came to the hazel tree, the little dove sat there still, and sang, back again, look to the shoe. The shoe is too small and not made for you. Prince, prince, look again for thy bride, for she's not the true one that sits by thy side. Then he looked down, and saw that the blood streamed so much from the shoe, that her white stockings were quite red. So he turned his horse and brought her also back again. This is not the true bride. Have you no other daughters? No, said he. There is only a little dirty Ashputtel here, a child of my first wife. I am sure she cannot be the bride. The prince told him to send her. But the mother said, no, she is much too dirty. She will not dare to show herself. However, the prince would have her come, and she first washed her face and hands, and then went in and curtsied to him, and he reached her the golden slipper. Then she took her clumsy shoe off her left foot, and put on the golden slipper. It fitted her as if it had been made for her. And when she drew near and looked at her face, he knew her, and said, this is the right bride. But the mother and both the sisters were frightened, and turned pale with anger, as he took Ashputtel on his horse, and rode away with her. And when they came to the hazel tree, the white dove sang, home, home, look at the shoe. Princess, the shoe was made for you. Prince, prince, take home thy bride, for she is the true one that sits by thy side. And when the dove had done its song, it came flying, and perched upon the right shoulder, and so went home. All right, so let's first do that. So that was the story of Ashputtel, which is very similar, or the German version of Cinderella. And just giving you a heads up, Cinderella is one of the oldest story tales, so there are tons of different interpretations of it in many European cultures and non-European cultures as well. I believe the oldest one is from China or Japan. I can't remember which culture is the oldest one, but they have one in both. I can't remember which one. I think it might be China, but that's trivia for the day. So the next story in our repertoire is going to be The White Snake. And I haven't read this one before, so fair warning if any gruesome bits pop in, because the Goosebumps fairy tales is giving it a go. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things was brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared, and no one else was present, a trusty servant had to bring him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what was in it. And neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover of it until he was all alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant who took away the dish was overcome with curiosity, that he could not help carrying the dish into his room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it. So he cut a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another of all kinds of things that they had seen in the fields and the woods. Eating the snake had given him power of understanding the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon this trusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him, and threatened with angry words that unless he could before the morrow point out the thief, he himself would be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear, he went down into the courtyard and took thought how to help himself out of his trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by a brook and taking their rest. And while they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation with him. The servants stood by and listened. They were telling one another of all the places where they had been wandering about all the morning, and what good food they had found. And one said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy on my stomach. As I was eating in haste, I swallowed a ring which lay under the queen's window." The servant at once seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Pray, kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. "She was spared no trouble to fatten herself, and has been waiting to be roasted long enough." So he cut off her head, and as she was being dressed for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favor, and promised him the best place in the court that he should wish for. The servant refused everything, and only asked for a horse and some money for travel. as he had a mind to see the world and go about with it. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came to a pond, where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds and gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are dumb, he heard them lamenting that they must perish so miserably, and he had a kind heart. He got off his horse and took the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leapt with delight, put out their heads, and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened, and heard the ant king complain, "Why cannot folk with their clumsy beasts keep off our bodies? That stupid horse with his heavy hoofs has been treading down my people without mercy." So he turned on to a side path, and the ant king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into a wood, and there he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest and throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, idle, good-for-nothing creatures," they cried. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings, and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are! We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" So the good young fellows alighted and killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food. Then they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." Now he had to use his own legs. He just pulled his horse. Poor thinking guy. And when he had walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and a man rode up on horseback, crying aloud, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever seeks her hand must perform a hard task, and if he does not succeed, he will forfeit his life." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, when the youth saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it, before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch the ring from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you'll be thrown in again and again until you perish amid the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore. He considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fish come swimming towards him, and they were the very fishes whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in his mouth, which it laid on the shore at the youth's feet. And when he had the shell, full of joy, he took it to the king and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. The gold ring was inside the mussel, sorry. And when he had taken it up and opened it, there lay the gold ring in the shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. Yes, of course, why not? But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal on earth, she scorned him, and required him first to perform another task. She went down into the garden, and strewed with her own hands 10 sackfuls of millet seed on the grass. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning before sunrise, these must be picked up, and not a single grain be wanted." She told her husband. The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task. But he could think of nothing, and there he sat, sorrowfully waiting the break of day, when he should be led to his death. But as soon as the first rays of the sun shone into the garden, he saw that all 10 sacks, standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands and thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had by great industry picked up all the millet seed and gathered them into the sacks. Presently the king's daughter herself came down into the garden, and was amazed to see that the young man had done the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both the tasks, he shall not be my husband until he had brought me the apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out, and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs were carrying him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay down under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hands. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down to him, and perched themselves upon his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving. When we had grown big and heard that you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards, and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had now no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together, and then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. Right, and that is the end of the white snake. I don't even see how it's named the white snake. It doesn't really play too much. Anyway, okay, so that is the end of the second tale. We have time for one more. Alright, for our last tale today, we have one from Grimm's Household Tales. This is the second volume. So this one's a little bit less now. It's called One Eye, Two Eyes, and Three Eyes. There was once a woman who had 3 daughters, the eldest of whom she called One Eye, because she had only one eye in the middle of her forehead, and the second, Two Eyes, because she had 2 eyes like other folks, and the youngest, Three Eyes, because she had 3 eyes, and her third eye was also in the center of her forehead. However, as Two Eyes saw just as other human beings did, her sisters and her mother could not endure her. They said to her, "Thou with thy 2 eyes art no better than the common people. Thou dost not belong to us." They pushed her about and threw old clothes to her, and gave her nothing to eat but what they left, and did everything they could to make her unhappy. It came to pass that Two Eyes had to go out into the fields and tend the goat, but she was still quite hungry, because her sisters had given her so little to eat. So she sat down on a ridge and began to weep, and so bitterly that 2 streams ran down from her eyes, and once when she looked up in her grief, a woman was standing beside her, who said, "Why art thou weeping, little Two Eyes?" Two Eyes answered, "Have I not reason to weep, when I have 2 eyes like other people, and my sisters and mother hate me for it, and push me from one corner to another, throw old clothes at me, and give me nothing to eat but scraps they leave? Today they have given me so little that I am still quite hungry." Then the wise woman said, "Wipe away thy tears, Two Eyes, and I will tell you thee something. To stop thee ever suffering from hunger again, just say to thy goat, 'Bleat, my little goat, bleat. Cover the table with something to eat.' And then a clean, well-spread little table will stand before thee, with the most delicious food upon it, of which thou mayest eat as much as thou art inclined for. And when thou hast had enough, and hast no more need of the little table, just say, 'Bleat, bleat, my little goat,' I pray, and take the table quite away, and then it will vanish again from thy sight." Hereupon the wise woman departed. But Two Eyes thought, "I must instantly make a trial, and see if what they said was true, for I am far too hungry." And she said, "Bleat, bleat, my little goat, bleat. Cover the table with something to eat." And scarcely had she spoken the words, than the little table, covered with a white cloth, was standing there, and on it was a plate with a knife and fork, and a silver spoon. And the most delicious food was there also. Warm and smoking as if it had just come out of the kitchen. Then Two Eyes said the shortest prayer she knew, "Lord God be with us always, amen," and helped herself to some food, and enjoyed it. And when she was satisfied, she said, as the wise woman had taught her, "Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away." And immediately the little table and everything on it was gone again. That was a delightful way of keeping house, thought Two Eyes, and was quite glad and happy. In the evening, when she went home with her goat, she found a small earthenware dish with some food, which her sisters had set ready for her, but she did not touch it. Next day she again went out with her goat, and left the few bits of broken bread which had been handed to her lying untouched. The first and second time she did this, her sisters did not remark at all, but as it happened every time, they did observe it, and said, "There is something wrong about Two Eyes. She always leaves her food untasted, and she used to eat up everything that was given to her. She must have discovered other ways of getting food." In order that they might learn the truth, they resolved to send One Eye with Two Eyes when she went to drive her goat to the pasture, to observe what Two Eyes did when she was there, and whether anyone brought her anything to eat and drink. So when Two Eyes set out the next time, One Eye went to her and said, "I will go with you to the pasture, and see that the goat is well taken care of, and driven where there is food." But Two Eyes knew what was in One Eye's mind, and drove the goat into high grass, and said, "Come, One Eye, we will sit down, and I will sing something to you." One Eye sat down, and was tired with unaccustomed walk, and the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes saying constantly, "One Eye, wakest thou? One Eye, sleepest thou?" Until One Eye shut her one eye and fell asleep. And as soon as Two Eyes saw that One Eye was fast asleep, and could discover nothing, she said, "Bleat, my little goat, bleat. Cover the table with something to eat," and seated herself at her table, and ate and drank until she was satisfied. And when she again cried, "Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away," and in an instant all was gone. Two Eyes now awakened One Eye, and said, "One Eye, you want to take care of the goat, and go to sleep while you are doing it. And in the meantime the goat might run all over the road. Come, let us go home again." So they went home, And again Two Eyes let her little dish stand untouched, and One Eye could not tell her mother why she would not eat it, and to excuse herself said, "I fell asleep when I was out." Next day the mother said to Three Eyes, "This time thou shalt go and observe. If Two Eye eats anything when she is out, and if anyone fetches her food and drink, for she must eat and drink in secret." So Three Eyes went to Two Eyes and said, "I shall go with you and see if the goat is taken proper care of, and driven where there is food." But Two Eyes knew what was in Three Eyes' mind, and drove the goat into high grass, and said, "We will sit down, and I will sing something to you, Three Eyes." Three Eyes sat down and was tired with the walk and the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes began the same song as before. "Three Eyes, are you waking?" But then instead of singing, "Three Eyes, are you sleeping?" as she ought to have done, she thoughtlessly sang, "Two Eyes, are you sleeping?" and sang all the time, "Three Eyes, are you waking? Two Eyes, are you sleeping?" When two of the eyes which Three Eyes had shut and fell asleep, but the third, as it had not been named in the song, did not sleep. It is true that Three Eyes shut it, but only in her cunning, to pretend it was asleep too. But it blinked, and could see everything very well. And when Two Eyes thought that Three Eyes was fast asleep, she used her little charm. "Bleat, my little goat, bleat. Cover the table with something to eat, and ate and drank as much as her heart desired, and then order the table to go away again. Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away." And Three Eyes had seen everything. Then Two Eyes came to her, waked her, and said, "Have you been asleep, Three Eyes? You are a good caretaker. Come, we will go home." And when they got home, Two Eyes again did not eat. And Three Eyes said to the mother, "Now I know why that high-minded thing there does not eat. When she is out, she says to the goat, 'Bleat, my little goat, bleat. Cover the table with something to eat.' And then a little table appears before her covered with the best of food, much better than any we have here. And when she has eaten all she wants, she says, 'Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away.' And all disappears. I watched everything closely. She put two of my eyes to sleep by using a certain form of words, but luckily the one in my forehead kept awake." Then the envious mother cried, "Dost thou want to fare better than we do? The desire shall pass away." And she fetched a butcher's knife and thrust it into the heart of the goat, which fell down dead. When Two Eyes saw that, she went out full of trouble, seated herself on the ridge of grass at the edge of the field, and wept bitter tears. Suddenly the wise woman once more stood by her side, and said, "Two Eyes, why art thou weeping?" "Have I not reason to weep?" she answered. "The goat which covered the table for me every day, when I spoke your charm, has been killed by my mother, and now I shall again have to bear hunger and want." The wise woman said, "Two Eyes, I will give thee a piece of good advice. Ask thy sisters to give thee the entrails of the slaughtered goat, and bury them in the ground in front of the house, and thy fortune will be made." Then she vanished, and Two Eyes went home and said to her sisters, "Dear sisters, do give me some part of the goat. I don't wish for what is good, but give me the entrails." Then they laughed and said, "If that's all you want, you can have it." Two Eyes took the entrails and buried them quietly in the evening in front of the house door, as the wise woman had counseled her to do. Next morning, when they all awoke and went to the house door, there stood a strangely magnificent tree with trees of silver and fruit of gold hanging among them. so that all the wide world there was nothing more beautiful or precious. They did not know how the tree could have come there during the night, but Two Eyes saw that it had grown up out of the entrails of the goat, for it was standing on the exact spot where she had buried them. Then the mother said to One Eye, "Climb up, my child, and gather some of the fruit of the tree for us." One Eye climbed up, and when she was about to get hold of one of the golden apples, the branch snapped from her hands, and that each time that happened, so that she could not pluck a single apple, let her do what she might. Then said the mother, "Three Eyes, do you climb up, you with your 3 eyes, and look about, and much better than One Eye." One Eye slipped down, and 3 Eyes climbed up. 3 Eyes was not more skillful, and might search as she liked, but the golden apples always escaped her. At length the mother grew impatient, and climbed up herself, but could get hold of the fruit no better than One Eye and 3 Eyes, for she always clutched empty air. Then said Two Eyes, "I will just go up. Perhaps I may succeed better." The sisters cried, "You indeed, with your 2 eyes, what can you do?" But Two Eyes climbed up, and the old apples did not get out of her way, but came into her hand of their own accord, so that she could pluck them one after the other, and brought a whole apronful down with her. The mother took them away from her, and instead of treating poor Two Eyes any better for this, she and One Eye and 3 Eye were only envious, because Two Eyes alone had been able to get the fruit, and they treated her still more cruelly. It so befell that once they were all standing together by the tree, a young knight came about. "Quick, Two Eyes," cried the 2 sisters, "creep under this, and don't disgrace us." With all speed they turned an empty barrel which was standing close by the tree over poor Two Eyes, and they pushed the golden apples which had been gathering under it too. When the knight came nearer, he was a handsome lord who stopped and admired the magnificent gold and silver tree, and said to the 2 sisters, "To whom does this tree belong? Anyone who would bestow one branch of it upon me might in return for it ask whatever he desired." Then One Eye and 3 Eye replied that the tree belonged to them, and that they would give him a branch. And they both took great trouble, but they were not able to do it, for the branches and fruit both moved away from them every time. Then said the knight, "It is very strange that the tree should belong to you, and that you should not still be able to break a piece off." They again asserted that the tree was their property, whilst they were saying so. Two Eyes rolled out a couple of golden apples from under the barrel to the feet of the knight, for she was vexed with One Eye and 3 Eye, for they were not speaking the truth. When the knight saw the apples, he was astonished, and asked where they came from. One Eye and 3 Eyes answered that they had another sister, who was not allowed to show herself, for she had only 2 eyes like any common person. The knight, however, desired to see her, cried, "Two Eyes, come forth." Then 2 Eyes, quite comforted, came from beneath the barrel, and the knight was surprised at her great beauty, and said, "Thou, 2 Eyes, canst certainly break off a branch from the tree for me?" "Yes," replied 2 Eyes, "that I certainly shall be able to do, for the tree belongs to me." And she climbed up, and with the greatest ease broke off a branch, beautiful silver leaves and golden fruit, and gave it to the knight. Then said the knight, "Two Eyes, what shall I give thee for it?" "Alas," said 2 Eyes, "I suffer from hunger and thirst, grief and want, from early morning till late night. If you would take me with you, and deliver me from these things, I should be happy." So the knight lifted Two Eyes onto his horse and took her home with him to his father's castle. And there he gave her beautiful clothes, meat, and drink to her heart's content. And as he loved her so much, he married her. And the wedding was solemnized with great rejoicing. When Two Eyes was thus carried away by the handsome knight, her two sisters grudged her good fortune in downright earnest. The wonderful tree, however, still remains with us. And even if they can't gather no fruit from it, still everyone will stand still and look at it, and come to admire it. Who knows what good things may be in store for us? I believe this is the mother's the next morning, after the prince had taken the second sister off to his wife, all that good stuff, the next morning the tree had vanished, and all their hopes were at an end. And when Two Eyes looked out the window of her own little room, to her great delight, it was standing in front of it, and so it had followed her. Two Eyes lived a long time in happiness. Once, two poor women came to her in her castle and begged for alms. She looked in their faces and recognized her sisters, One Eye and Three Eyes, who had fallen into such poverty that they had to wander about and beg their bread from door to door. Two Eyes, however, made them welcome and was kind to them and took care of them, so that they both lived with all their hearts, repented the evil that they had done their sister grief. And that is the end of One Eye, Two Eye, and Three Eye. Alright, that's the third tale for tonight. My voice is giving out a little bit, so I'm going to call that a night. And thank you everyone for popping in, and you have a very good night. See you tomorrow night with a special edition of the nighttime reading hour, because tomorrow night we will be hearing the second chapter of The White Wolf and the Darkness. The Wolf and the Darkness. Yes, The White Wolf and the Darkness. I'll be reviewing, nearing the second chapter for that. And I'll be doing that every 30th of the month, because you can only stay up for a month. So the first chapter will be taken down after tomorrow. So if you want to hear both of those chapters, check out the Anchor page tomorrow, and that'll be the last day you can hear both of them. And after that point, the only time you'll be able to hear or see the chapters will be you actually read or buy the book. So, see you tomorrow, same bad time, same bad place, and I'll be putting up the next chapter, which is chapter 2 of the White Wolf and Darkness. Okay, so talk to everybody later, and have a good day.